All right, welcome back to the podcast for the Week 2 Waiver Wire show. After a long Week 2 full of a lot of injuries, there's going to be a lot of waiver pickups to go through today. So I'm going to get right into it. Week 2 Waiver Wire show, guys to pick up going into Week 3 of the fantasy season. So this week, I'm going to start with my top 5 waiver wire ads of the week. And then after the top 5 ads of the week, I'm going to go through some other potential ads that you can add to your team. So number 1 waiver wire ad of the week is Jerick McKinnon. Raheem Mostert's out with a knee injury. Tevin Coleman's out with an injury. Jerick McKinnon is now the unquestioned starter for the San Francisco 49ers. McKinnon has unbelievable speed, ripped off some huge runs. It was like 3rd and 30 last week, and he converted. Ripped off a huge run. I'm pretty sure he had a touchdown. He's super fast. He has great receiving upside, too. He can play all 3 downs. And now he's the unquestioned starter for the 49ers. So right now, he's my number 1 waiver wire ad of the week. If you've listened to anything that I've done, follow me on Twitter or whatever, you should already have Jerick McKinnon on your rosters. Jerick McKinnon should not be a free agent in your league. He should be on your team. He should have been on your team during your draft. But if for any reason Jerick McKinnon is not on a team, then Jerick McKinnon should be the number 1 waiver wire ad of the week this week. Number 2 waiver wire ad of the week this week is Mike Davis. Mike Davis will now be the starter for Carolina with McCaffrey going down for 4 to 6 weeks with that high ankle sprain. So Mike Davis is going to be the number 1 back there. I'm not sure really who else is even there besides Mike Davis now. As we've seen with McCaffrey, they're gonna feed the lead back. And as soon as Mike Davis came in the game for McCaffrey, Mike Davis relieved Christian McCaffrey with 8 catches. So if Mike Davis is going to come in the game and catch passes like that, then he's going to have some decent fantasy weeks here while McCaffrey's gone. He could be a solid middle-of-the-road RB2 if you're someone struggling with the McCaffrey injury or someone who's just struggling with running back depth in general. Mike Davis could be a pretty good ad here. Mike Davis really has never gotten a good chance to be a primary back in the NFL. But Mike Davis actually is a pretty solid player. Like I said, 8 catches last week in relief of McCaffrey. So he actually could be a really solid fantasy option. I think it's a name that not a lot of people know about. I think more people are going to be on the Dion Lewis train this week for free agents and waivers just because Dion Lewis is a name that people know. And Mike Davis really isn't a name that people know, but I think Mike Davis is going to be a great ad just because Mike Davis is in a much better offense. Carolina's looking like a better offense than the New York Giants right now. So Mike Davis definitely is going to be my number 2 waiver wire ad of the week. He's going to be the new starting running back for Carolina. 8 catches last week in relief of McCaffrey. So number 3 waiver wire ad of the week, I have Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis probably is going to be the new starter for the New York Giants. And I'm not really high on adding Dion Lewis as a super high priority, but if Dion Lewis is going to be the starting running back, he's going to get some touches. I'm pretty sure he had 3 or 4 catches last week after Barkley got injured. So Dion Lewis, number 3 on the list. I wouldn't put, if you're in a free agent auction bidding kind of league, I wouldn't put too much money on Dion Lewis just because they might sign Devontae Freeman. They still have Wayne Gallman, who's still a really good pass catcher. So I wouldn't put too much in on Dion Lewis, but he's definitely worth adding. Definitely could be a solid pass catcher for the New York Giants. Number 4, I have Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki is probably owned in most leagues, but I'm sure there are leagues where he's not owned. After week 1, he kind of had a dud week. Gesicki went 8 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown against the Bills. And I think Gesicki just had a bad week 1 because they played against the Patriots, Patriots are probably going to have a good defense again this year, even though they got shredded by Russell Wilson. But we think the Patriots still have a good defense, and that's probably why Gesicki didn't do much. So Gesicki week 2 comes out, has a huge week. I think Gesicki is an explosive player. He's extremely athletic. All his combine numbers were fantastic. And he still has Ryan Fitzpatrick there. Gesicki was one of my favorite sleeper tight ends of the year this year. And after this big week, Gesicki must be rostered. So my number 5 top waiver wire ad of the week is Darrell Henderson. So Darrell Henderson, with Cam Akers getting injured last week, had 12 carries for 80 yards. Like I said, Cam Akers left the game injured. Malcolm Brown, they just came out and said today that he has a fractured pinky. So Malcolm Brown is going to play on Sunday against the Bills, but I don't know how much playing time Malcolm Brown's going to get. I don't know if they're going to give him that many touches with this fractured pinky. So Darrell Henderson is set up to be the lead back for the Rams. The Rams look like they're back. McVay, the offense, looks like they're back to form. So if Henderson's going to be the starting running back for the Rams, then Henderson could be a great add. Henderson, I think, don't quote me on this, he's at least up there, but I think has the highest yards per carry in the history of college football. He has extremely high level speed. He can make big plays happen. He's dynamic. Like I said, 80 yards on only 12 carries last week. Darrell Henderson is teed up to be the starter for the Rams offense. And I actually think Darrell Henderson's worth a start this upcoming week, especially if the Rams play the Bills this week. The Bills have been struggling with injuries at linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano were out this week. And if they're going to be out again next week, then you could see Darrell Henderson rip off some huge runs. So Darrell Henderson is definitely in my top 5 waiver wire ads of the week. So after the top 5 now, I am going to just go through some other waiver wire additions for the week and give everyone out there some other waiver wire additions to possibly add. So number 1, other additions, I have Wayne Gallman. Wayne Gallman is a very, very good pass catcher. I don't know if they're going to sign Devontae Freeman, the Giants, but Wayne Gallman, because of his pass catching ability, could carve out a role. I wouldn't recommend starting Wayne Gallman, or I don't even know if I would start Dion Lewis until I saw kind of what the snap share looks like, or until I saw what the snaps and the targets and the rushing attempts look like. I would even almost wait a week. So that's why I said with Dion Lewis. And now that I think about it, I think I would move Darrell Henderson up to my number 3 top waiver wire ad of the week, and I would bump Dion Lewis down to number 5. So, Darrell Henderson is now my number 3 waiver wire ad of the week. Dion Lewis goes down to number 5. Just because Wayne Gallman is such a good pass catcher, we don't know if Dion Lewis is going to be like a workhorse or anything, and I'm sure Wayne Gallman will heavily be involved, and especially if they get Devontae Freeman, then Dion Lewis definitely is not that big of a waiver wire ad. Number 2, I have CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had 6 targets week 1, 9 targets week 2, 100 yards, and he played 83% of snaps this week. CeeDee Lamb was one of the best receiving college prospects to come out of college, and he's already doing great in the NFL so far. He's playing almost every snap, goes over 100 yards in week 2, and he's getting a bunch of targets, and he's kind of overtaken Michael Gallup already, which a lot of people loved Michael Gallup this year, and CeeDee Lamb's kind of already starting to overtake him. Number 3, I have Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz had a 70% snap share, took over for the injured Blake Jarwin for the Cowboys, had 9 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Could be a nice tight end option going forward. And then just a quick heads up for these other additions. I'm counting off 1, 2, 3, but they're not in any significant order. There's no significance to this order. These are just numbered for me to organize it a little easier. So number 4, other waiver wire additions, Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson probably might have been picked up last week in your league. Some people might have thought it was a fluke, but Robbie Anderson looks like he has escaped Adam Gase and is actually a really good player. 8 targets last week, 10 targets this week, over 100 yards both weeks. So it looks like Robbie Anderson is actually going to be a really solid fantasy asset without being on an Adam Gase team. The Panthers have been passing a lot. They're going to be trailing all season long. Their defense has been terrible. So Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to throw a lot, and it looks like he really likes Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson, we know, is extremely fast. So if Robbie Anderson is going to have this speed and get these targets, Robbie Anderson could be a huge fantasy asset going forward. Number 5, other additions, I have Jeff Wilson. So Jeff Wilson Jr. would be an extremely deep league ad. He's probably going to be the backup to Jerick McKinnon until Tevin Coleman or Raheem Mostert come back. So McKinnon hasn't played in 2 years. McKinnon still could be a little rusty. 49ers like to split up the touches. They don't like to give all the touches to one running back. So you could see Jeff Wilson Jr. in there getting some carries, getting some catches. McKinnon could still be a little rusty. They could split the backfield up. So Jeff Wilson could get in there, get some touches too. Number 6, I have Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed, it's never been a question of his talent. It's always been a question of his health. And he was healthy this week in place of George Kittle. 7 catches, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns. Could be a great streaming tight end option for those who may have lost George Kittle for the next couple weeks. Those who drafted Evan Ingram, those who are worried about Ertz right now. If you're that kind of fantasy person right now that needs a tight end really bad, Jordan Reed could be a really solid add until Kittle gets back. Number 7, I have Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan, 6 catches, 75 yards this week. Could be the number 1 option with all the Jets injuries. Denzel Mims is on the IR. Perriman is a little banged up, and he's getting shadowed by number 1 corners. Crowder has a hamstring injury, and Chris Hogan could just stand to benefit from this just straight because of targets. He could just get targeted all day long now because there's really nobody else on the team to get any targets. There's really no receiving options there other than Chris Hogan. So Chris Hogan could be a volume receiver going forward until some other guys in this offense get healthy. Chris Hogan, I doubt I would start him unless you're in some sort of 14-team league or you just have so many injuries where you have nobody else to start. But Chris Hogan could see some targets, could be a nice volume wide receiver, second flex, something like that, where you just need 10-plus points. I think Chris Hogan, if he's the number 1 receiver, can get you like 10 points per week at least. Number 8, I have Jerry Jeudy / KJ Hamler. So Cortland Sutton's now out for the year with a knee tear. So Jeudy and Hamler, the 2 rookies, are going to step in, probably be the top 2 receivers with Tim Patrick. But Tim Patrick isn't anything special. Tim Patrick isn't a special player. But Jeudy and Hamler, these rookies, do have some really great talent. So we'll have to see which one of them kind of takes a step forward. Probably going to be Jeudy, but Hamler has great speed. So both of them could be fantasy options going forward with Sutton out for the year. Number 9, James Robinson for the Jaguars must be owned in all leagues now. 100 rushing yards and a touchdown this week. That's 2 really good weeks for him as an undrafted rookie. James Robinson must be owned in pretty much every single league unless you're in like an 8-team league. But other than that, James Robinson is a must-own player now in fantasy football. Number 10, Laviska Shenault. Laviska Shenault is a deeper add. Laviska Shenault, the addition of him, he looks like an alpha receiver. He's getting carries in the backfield and receptions as a receiver. They're using him all over the place. And with the addition of Shenault is immediately taking targets away from DJ Chark. I was really high on Chark this year just because Shenault was a rookie. But even already through 2 weeks, Shenault is taking touches away from DJ Chark. And Shenault, I don't know if he's going to be startable or anything fantasy relevant, but maybe by the end of the year, if Minshew keeps playing well, Shenault could come along and be fantasy relevant. Number 11, I have Keelan Cole. Keelan Cole, 547 and a touchdown in week 1, 6 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown in week 2 on 7 targets. So Keelan Cole is now even getting more targets than DJ Chark. Keelan Cole is taking targets away from Chark. Jay Gruden in this new offense, they're doing some things different. They're spreading the ball around more. Minshew isn't peppering Chark with targets, and now you see Shenault and Cole getting targets. So Keelan Cole could be a really good add for deep leagues, especially because I think he had 5 targets in week 1, 7 targets in week 2. So that steady, if he's going to get 5 to 7 targets per week, then Keelan Cole could be fantasy relevant as well. Number 12, I have Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard should be owned in most 12-team PPR leagues. He was a guy I've been pretty high on all offseason, and now Devontae Adams has a hamstring injury. So if Adams is going to be out or has to miss even 1 or 2 weeks, Allen Lazard is going to be the number 1 wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Number 13, I have Isaiah Ford. I had Isaiah Ford for the Dolphins on here last week as a deep add, And I said Isaiah Ford would be a really solid play this week in fantasy and going forward if Devontae Parker was injured and had to miss time. But Parker played the entire game, and Isaiah Ford still had 7 catches for 76 yards on 9 targets. So Isaiah Ford is definitely worth an add in deeper PPR leagues. Could be a really awesome option going forward. If he's going to get you that 10 to 12 point floor, and that, like this week he had 14 fantasy points in a PPR league, and that's great in a deep league, so he could be worth an add. Could be a bye week guy, someone to replace receivers with injuries. So Isaiah Ford could be an option, and now that we've seen him produce with Parker on the field at the same time, if Parker or Preston Williams ever had to miss time, Isaiah Ford could be a stud fantasy option. Number 14, Mo Alley-Cox, the tight end for the Colts, over 100 receiving yards without Jack Doyle. So if Jack Doyle is injured and not playing, Mo Alley-Cox could be a really great spot starter. Goes over 100 yards, taking over for Doyle. And I think Jack Doyle, I saw a stat today that said Jack Doyle has only gone over 100 receiving yards once in his career. So Mo Alley-Cox does it already in this game. If Jack Doyle is out in the future, in the next couple weeks, Mo Alley-Cox could be another sleeper tight end. Number 15, I have Joshua Kelly, 23 rush attempts this week. I think I saw a stat today that said Kelly and Eckler are both tied for top 5 in rushing attempts in the NFL going into the Monday night game. So they're going to feed Kelly. So basically what it looks like the Chargers are doing right now is that Joshua Kelly is just taking over the Melvin Gordon role, and Eckler is just staying in the Eckler role. So with that being said, what we saw from Justin Herbert this week is that Eckler actually did get some targets. Eckler got some catches. So Kelly got his touches. Eckler got his touches. We've seen it happen before where this Chargers team can have 2 fantasy relevant running backs. With Justin Herbert at quarterback, it looked a lot better for Eckler. So I wouldn't be selling Eckler right now. I don't think Eckler is really going to get that many touchdowns this season. They seem to love Kelly on the goal line and in short yardage situations. But Eckler did get some targets. He did get some catches, and Eckler is still a phenomenal rusher. Go watch the first Chargers game. Go watch the second Chargers game. Eckler is still a phenomenal runner of the football, and we just need him to get targets. That was the only problem in week 1, that he didn't get targets. And if he's going to see 4, 5, 6 targets from Herbert, then Eckler is going to be just fine. Maybe he's not going to return early, mid-second round value where you drafted him, but Eckler is still going to be just fine in fantasy if Herbert is going to take over and play. So it seems. And so it looks like Kelly is just taking over that Melvin Gordon early down grinder, short yardage, goal line back, and Eckler is just going to stay in his Eckler role that he's been in the last couple years. Number 16, I have Justin Herbert. Like I just said, Justin Herbert, 300 yards in his debut, had a rushing touchdown. Justin Herbert, if he's going to have some rushing upside, he could be relevant in only Superflex leagues. Don't pick him up in single quarterback leagues. But if anybody out there is playing Superflex, I have a Superflex league. And if you're struggling for quarterback help in Superflex leagues, you can pick up Justin Herbert, possibly start him in good matchups if he plays some poor defenses coming up. Maybe start him if you have to. Justin Herbert could be a speculative add in Superflex leagues. And kind of going off of that, I actually don't have him on the list right now, but just talking about with Herbert in Superflex leagues, Jalen Hurts could kind of be a speculative add here going forward. If the Eagles' offensive line is going to play poorly, if they're going to keep losing, if Carson Wentz is going to keep getting crushed, if Carson Wentz gets hurt, Jalen Hurts, we know from college, has rushing upside. Jalen Hurts could be an add in Superflex League as well, just to add on to that Justin Herbert Superflex League ad. So number 17, I have Drew Sample. Drew Sample, check it out. Put an article up on at Breakout Finder on Twitter. I wrote an article about Drew Sample. Drew Sample actually has an awesome athletic profile. He was a rookie last year, second-round draft capital, was injured most or all of last year. And now Drew Sample is the starter with CJ Uzomah injured. Drew Sample has some athleticism. He has good size. On Thursday night, he had 9 targets, 7 catches. New starting tight end for Joe Burrow. And we've seen through 2 weeks now that Joe Burrow really loves throwing to the tight end position to the middle of the field. So 9 targets, that's awesome to see. Drew Sample in deeper leagues, dynasty leagues for sure, could be an add. Anywhere where you start 2 tight ends, Drew Sample is definitely worth an add. And then number 18, I have N'Keal Harry. 8 catches, 72 yards, played 85% of snaps. He had 5 or 6 catches in week 1. Cam Newton looks unbelievable with Bill Belichick through 2 weeks. N'Keal Harry hopefully is just going to keep getting better and better. Hopefully he can return that first-round draft capital. It's looking good so far for N'Keal Harry. It really is through 2 weeks. It's looking really good so far for N'Keal Harry. So I think N'Keal Harry is for sure worth an add, especially in PPR leagues. He's definitely worth an add in most 12-team leagues, maybe 10-team leagues where your competition is a little savvier, where there's not many guys on the waiver wire in your 10-team leagues. Definitely get Harry on your roster. Things are looking really good for N'Keal Harry and the Patriots offense right now. So there's 18 other additions in addition to my top 5 waiver wire adds of the week. So 23 total names. I hope you listened to the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully you can go get some of these guys and recover from all these injuries in fantasy. I'm gonna try to release some sort of episode coming up soon, maybe next week, on buy low, sell high guys. Maybe some guys that you want to target. Like if you're 3 or 4-0 going into if you're 3 or 4-0 in your league in the next few weeks, maybe you start to try and trade for guys like McCaffrey or Michael Thomas to the owners who are scrambling for wins now that their top players are out, or the Barkley owner, or things like that. So I'm going to try and get that out in the next couple weeks, probably after week 3 or week 4, when the picture gets a little clearer on all these players and all these offenses and all these teams. But that'll come a couple weeks from now. So there's my top 5 waiver wire adds of the week and some other additions there. I don't edit these podcasts. I just do them straight up. I just record them straight up. So just to remind you, number 3 waiver wire ad is actually Darrell Henderson, number 3 top waiver wire ad. And I just bumped Dion Lewis down to the number 5 waiver priority ad of the week, just in case they signed Devontae Freeman. But when I started this episode, I originally had Dion Lewis as number 3, but I don't edit these. I don't feel like editing them, and I don't feel like starting over. So just mid-podcast, I did make that switch, and Darrell Henderson should be a priority over Dion Lewis in fantasy leagues this week. So thanks again for listening. Hope this waiver wire show helped out. I'm going to be trying to do them every single week to help you with your waiver wire additions. So thanks again for listening. Take care.